Hey,
Oh, no.
not enough. Yeah, come on, we got to get those viewers in, however we can do it. People were suggesting that Helen shouldn't be on the bottom, so we've got the straight male on the bottom, which, as Arty is saying, is a rarity. So
yeah,
enjoy
straight
it.
bottom. Oh my God.
How are you guys doing?
Good. I'm trying not to laugh too hard because I've had some constructive feedback, shall we say, from people who weren't particularly happy that I was doing this broadcast with you, and have suggested that I'm some sort of agent of the patriarchy, and I was simpering, and that you two were talking over me, and I was not saying anything. I was just sort of sitting here laughing and agreeing.
I thought you said a lot, but then again, my expectations for women are much lower as to how much they're allowed to say. So, by my expectations, you were saying much more than I would normally allow a woman to speak in my presence. You know? So listen, it's been another fun week in mad gender stuff. Maybe I can. Is it okay if I leap in with my thing that I just think is extraordinary? Helen, you were asking what this was, and you must have missed it. But I think yesterday or the day before, I found a official document that has been given to ambulance staff. That gives a kind of it's a kind of a fact check type document for trans people. So you're supposed to use it's there to educate frontline NHS staff when they're picking up men with some eyeshadow on, and it's got all this advice, and the advice is and it's also got it says that the way it's framed is that people need to educate themselves. It falls to the guy who wrote this document to educate these frontline NHS staff. Now, I have to say, this appears to be an official NHS document, and included in it is, first of all, news that was something that will come as news to a lot of Bowie fans. Bowie is trans, apparently. And second of all, trans people were heavily involved in Stonewall, which we know is just one of those myths that simply won't die. Fred Sargent, who we all know, who's an actual eyewitness at Stonewall, spends he's tireless in trying to counter this thing. And it's just kind of full of, and also it has these kind of gender critical talking points that it refutes all through the piece. This is an official NHS document.
So this isn't a document to help trans people get the care that they need should they fall ill, and to make sure that they're correctly sexed, but still, referred to by their correct pronouns if that makes them more comfortable. So this isn't a document like that. This is a document.
It's got a bit of that.
This is a sort of.
It's got advice of how you should refer to them, and don't ask them about this and don't ask them about that.
Okay, so that I think is probably not unreasonable to to make people feel comfortable and make sure they think that they're getting the care that they need. But the rest of it seems it's sort of propaganda.
Yeah, it's just pure propaganda, and it's being produced by the NHS. I mean, we're now in a situation where the NHS and the BBC are producing untruths that we are paying for. The British taxpayer. I'm an Irish taxpayer, but I'm paying tax in Britain. But the British taxpayer is paying to have absolute bullshit rammed down our own throats. Which ironically, one would need an ambulance for if it happened in real life.
And this is interesting because we're well aware of what's been going on. We're well aware of the talking points, what's being pushed, And so we can see it for what it is. We can look at it and say, oh, look, this has clearly been produced by gendered intelligence or Stonewall. They've had these people in to talk to them. But the problem with it, of course, is that a lot of people don't. I mean, it's still, although it's a little bit more mainstream now, it still certainly isn't something that most, I would have thought, of the population are aware of. And so it is quite worrying, isn't it? That
it's so disturbing. I mean, I often use the word, and I stand by it 100%, but it's grooming. It's just grooming. It's grooming the public into, accepting a lot of ahistorical and unscientific nonsense, and it's very frightening how it's happening in plain sight. The BBC, like I got into trouble a while back. I remember
you in trouble.
But I was saying how I didn't want to pay the BBC license fee anymore because it's coming out with this propaganda, and it's just gotten worse. Like there was recently that trans TV show, which is about, a very interesting thing about this BBC show. It's called First Day, I think, and it's about a young boy who wants to be a girl, and it's all the poor little thing, how, blah blah blah. Two things. First of all, the whole thing is trying to tell girls and women that their boundaries are not acceptable. Okay, so it's grooming in that sense. But second of all, the thing I find really interesting about it is that the female, I have to turn off all my bloody WhatsApps and stuff while I'm talking. But the male to female at that age, the male to female thing is not common. More common by a factor of 4,000% are girls to boys. But of course they don't show that, because the girls to boys story isn't as fun. The girls to boys story involves binders. It involves double mastectomies. It involves your as Benji used to tell us, your organs fusing together so that you might have to have a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
When you're in your 20s. This is the stuff that the BBC doesn't go into because that's a bit messy, But some bloke who likes wearing dresses and with long hair, that's that the BBC are very confident in presenting that, because there's no downside to it as far as they're concerned. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. So I've gone from one thing to three, but basically, I'll just leave it here. The thing that really disturbs me is that institutions that we should be proud of, like the BBC and the NHS, are currently involved in the most extraordinary propagandizing. And I'm not going to pay for it anymore. I'm not going to pay for the BBC anyway. I'm gonna do something about that. I don't know how I can do it, but I'm not chipping in.
So we're reduced to applauding, as people were saying, it's a right-wing publication, The Spectator, for standing up to the co-op. Although, to be fair, I feel that the co-op really simply hadn't put a social media policy in place. They didn't really have any guidelines, and some poor intern who had the mobile phone for that hour has probably sadly got into quite a lot of trouble.
Her name is Alice.
For pushing, but for pushing their own agenda. But it's probably not necessarily their own agenda, is it? Because young people are, as we've just said, people are told this. People are told that they should be nice, and being nice in itself, out of context, isn't a bad thing to think. Yes, I should probably be nice most of the time. Be nice probably should be first. However, it is a little bit insidious when it's about rights for women. And so I couldn't help feeling a little bit sorry for poor old Alice in all of this, because she happened to be the one who came across the tweet and thought, I'll do what I feel is the right thing here.
Yeah, but she didn't just tweet. She said that she was going to pull the weight of Co-op to have the Spectator banned from their own advertising.
She did.
That's a bit cocky for a Twitter intern,
Yeah.
This is very true. Yes, the Spectator, I thought, was very interesting, but it occurred to me that right-wing publications have more freedom to do this because I mean they do, because nobody's going to call them out. People expect right-wing publications to be right-wing.
What the hell does it mean? Sorry, Helen. I just saw that.
I saw that too, but I'm ignoring it because it makes very little sense. So nobody. So I think it was interesting that it seems that they had a bit more freedom, or felt that they have more freedom in order to say, actually, what the hell are you talking about? No, we're not going to bow to this. Just don't advertise with it. That's fine. We're not. It's not acceptable. But it was interesting how the co-op backed down pretty much immediately on that. Yeah. Ooh, let's not be hasty here.
Yeah.
Well, it's because the editors at Spectator were like, you're not just making a political stand. You're saying that advertisers should be able to influence editorial. They framed it as like, this is a breaching of that, the Great Wall of editorial versus advertisers. And then Co-op was like, oh shit, you have a point. We better.
Also, what was very revealing about it is I think the Co-op realized quite quickly, oh, hang on, this view is actually a minority view, and we're just about to cut a huge source of income.
Well, yes, women who shop for families. Yes.
Yeah. And and it's just a shame that more people don't realize this. There's certain industries that where the kind of woke are in charge, like they hold a big stick over their employers, like the theater. Apparently, someone told me that the young cast of a lot of plays, they all completely swallow this stuff. And also, this same person told me that they're all just depressed. They've all got anxiety. They've all got like depression. And it's again, it's the stuff that
I think Jonathan, it must be very difficult. I think it must be very difficult if you're a young person and everyone around you is telling you this. It's much harder for them to. I mean, it's hard enough for me, and I'm a 51-year-old woman who doesn't really, give a fuck anymore. But because I'm secure enough in, my experiences, my feminism, my understanding, So, but it must be so difficult if you're young and everyone around you is saying this is the right thing, because you would question it, wouldn't you? I mean, I certainly would have. I mean, even now I sometimes question, because I think it's the right thing to do. I think am I right? What happens if I'm wrong? How would it be if I was wrong? And then I think, yeah, but it really, there is nothing. I can't think of any argument that's ever going to persuade me that women and girls should not have privacy away from people with penises whilst undressing, or that male-bodied people should compete against them in sports. I simply can't think of how this could go down unless men the world over stopped using said penis as a weapon against women immediately. I mean, maybe that would persuade me.
That's right. I mean, it's the order in which you progress is, if you want a gender-neutral world where sex doesn't matter, you don't declare that sex doesn't matter and let the chips fall where they may. First, you fix violence against women. You fix the unbelievably horrific statistics that 1 in 10 men is a rapist, and it's like 1 in 10,000 women. So if a woman steps into an elevator with 10 men, statistically speaking, she's standing 3 feet away from a rapist. And for that to happen with women, it would have to be a stadium, We need to fix that disparity first, and then we can talk about jumbling up the sexes and about how sex doesn't matter and it's all wishy-washy and fun. You start with it's just so backwards. I can't believe it. Yeah.
These kids are starting off from a position that we already live in a utopia.
Exactly.
And the thing that needs to be done is just to fix these things. And I do find it's
the
strange.
I don't see race argument. I don't see
race.
race.
Yeah. Exactly. And they don't. Actually, that brings us on to another subject that I think would be an interesting one to talk about, which is our second Rachel Dolezal type of person just turned up. And someone on Twitter tried to do this thing where they said, well, I guess we're going to hear some of the same old arguments about why if Rachel Dolezal and this Krug woman are if it's so taboo to appropriate a the black experience, why is it not taboo to appropriate the female experience, you know? And someone went into it. Here's a thread. Let me break it down. And it's like, it's just full of shit. There's not a single argument in it. It's just, you know, it's just special feelings and all that stuff.
Marina S. Sort of summed it up in one small tweet. She said, you know, don't try and look for convoluted arguments as to why these things are different. The only difference is that in one of them, men are affected too.
Yeah,
that was it.
Oh wow, well said.
Yeah,
brilliant.
But I would even be more. I would say I would be. This is basically white liberal middle class left wingers who are by far the ones who are adopting the trans ideology are more scared of black people than they are of women. It's that simple. They would. You know, like you remember what happened when Rachel Dolezal, you know, when it was discovered, the reaction from black people, understandably, was immediate and outraged and furious. You know,
but I think in part it's for the same reason, isn't it? Because
of course it is.
Women are just women. And you know, it's people are used to, society's used to walking over women, is used to expecting women to lay back and be kind and be nice and say, yes, okay, we'll fix everyone else's first. I will, you know, I am there to fix all of your problems. You know, it doesn't matter about me, I'm selfless. But you know, that's the expectation that's always been in society, which is why people are so angry with women. I made this point when Arty tweeted out this chat last week. And somebody came back, and the focus was on me. It wasn't on you two. It was on me. The anger was very much directed towards me for participating in this. And you know, I said it's the same way that the cry of turf works, isn't it? It's all focused on women, because women are, the anger is so much greater with women who speak out because of the expectation that women will be, you know, the mothers of everyone. Will be
look at the what's his name from LBC. Sorry, Arty, you may not know this, but there was a kind of new DJ on LBC, a new talk radio host on LBC. He seems to be an Arab guy.
A new disc jockey.
Yeah.
Majid. What's his name? Majid Nawaz.
Yes.
Oh, I'm familiar with him for years from atheist stuff. Yeah.
Yes, that's him. Oh, okay. And he just went through the Rachel Dolezal thing, and he said, "Why is transracialism a taboo, but transgenderism is not? Why is that?" He said if you accept one, you have to accept the other. Okay, so it's an argument that we've been making for years, right? But if J.K. Rowling made that argument, then Pink News would run 2,000 stories on her, and she would be subject to death and rape threats every moment of the day. But I guarantee you, he's not received anything like that. In fact, I don't even think it's a subject of conversation. You know?
No, I haven't seen. I've seen very little around it. I saw it. I saw it was tweeted out, and I've seen very little reaction to it.
Always the case. When men say these things, it's like, okay, there's a reasonable person. I may disagree, but respect to the man. And when a woman says it, it's like, you know.
Yes. The other thing I noticed this week, I've had quite some reaction on Twitter this week to this chat, and a lot of anger and a lot of trolling and a lot of unpleasant mocking, and it's been really interesting. There's been so much mocking of women and girls' concerns. You know, so much. Why are you so concerned with teenage girls, Helen? You're obsessed with naked teenage girls, and just mocking this idea. Oh, a penis is just going to fly off, is it? And just land and just do something horrible by its own accord. Just the level of contempt towards women, just saying, can we just talk about, seriously, women and girls having space to themselves whilst undressing, playing sports,
Yeah.
It's not very much, prisons, hospitals, just in those areas where the female body is uniquely vulnerable to male bodies, like sports, we're smaller, weaker, slower, and in other situations, we're able to be impregnated, we're smaller. And just, it's such a small thing. And the level of just unpleasantness, I feel,
I
is being
saw one
directed
person
towards me
saying
and
to you,
people like me.
I
Just
saw
because
one
of this.
I saw one person saying to you, sorry to cut across you, Helen, but
That's
I saw
fine.
one person saying to you something like, do you leave the door open with your legs spread
It
eagle
was
if
just so
you're having a shit?
horrid.
I mean,
What
these
does
people.
any of this have to do with trans? They're not even talking about trans women. They're saying people with, they're saying males. They're not talking about specifically males who have dysphoria or they're not dividing males in between trans women and males who don't identify as trans. They're just saying people with penises, what's your problem? It's just straight up men's rights, there
was a guy, Jarlath Regan, he's a comedian in Ireland, and I realized, like, he used to interview me, and I was waiting to go on his next podcast, and I realized it wasn't going to happen when he basically said that women don't have anything to fear from men, and the fact that he had bamboozled himself into arriving at that conclusion made me realize, oh, he's gone, he's done. He's on the other.
Yes, he's lost.
He's lost. He's on the other team now. Because if you don't realize, and I will say this, I think Jarlath is pretending not to realize that
that's right,
because he's doing it for self-protection.
This is the point, isn't it? This is why there's so much mocking and anger and unpleasantness, because everyone knows, everyone is aware, and in order to try not to have to address it, the debate gets changed into not, in fact, a debate, but just unpleasant accusations.
Yes.
The whole thing is just such a mess right now. Everything we've been talking about so far today, going right back to the ambulance flyer and to the BBC. The ambulance flyer is not just bad, it's like dumb. It's like the standards have been explicitly lowered to let trans people do something, for the sake of trans rights. That's just a poorly written, no other document by that organization would be allowed to be published with standards that low. So they're just deliberately being like, this is about trans, I don't know, let them do whatever they want. And that seems to be the standard everywhere. The BBC show with the 14-year-old, the standards are just so low. People, I don't know, just let them publish it. And this goes right to this. Like, people are acting crazy around trans, and they're too scared to think critically about it. They're just dumbing themselves down. I don't understand. This got to break open at some point, because every single person who opens their mouth on this subject, either they become super gender critical and think everything's gone crazy, or they make complete asses of themselves and just make more and more preposterous arguments.
It's why you never see it discussed. They will not appear on camera and argue these positions. Like, I would love to see Jarlath Regan argue on camera that women don't have anything to fear from men. He would last 2 seconds. 2 seconds. And it's only basically everyone has become a little Trump, right? Where, like, what Trump didn't like the press conferences, so he just stopped them. Okay, he just stopped them. Now there's no press conferences anymore. That's what everybody is like with the internet, like Stonewall stopping the replies. It's just Trump. It's just Trump hiding. Everyone is using Trump tactics, from right wingers all the way across the political realm to extreme left wingers. They all don't want to answer for their positions. So, when have you seen? This is probably one of the most contentious and bitter debates, right? How many discussions have you seen on it? None, because for various different reasons. First of all, as we found out from the Denton's document, just a quick refill for people who don't know what the Denton's document is. Denton's is a top law firm in the UK, and it brought out a document advising trans activists on how to fight for unpopular reforms. The unpopular reform they were actually advising on was one that said that children can change their gender without informing their parents. And they had all this advice, as if that wasn't shocking enough. They had all this advice on how to handle it. And one of their pieces of advice was avoid the media. And as I said, I always say, what other civil rights fight has ever given that advice to its adherents, to avoid the media? It's because it's not popular. It's because the positions are untenable. It doesn't stand up to any kind of rigorous. The only way you can get away with these positions is if you write them as a Twitter thread and you turn off the comments. That's the only way you can do it.
Yeah.
And let's put out an open invitation. Anyone who wants to speak to us about this and defend their positions, we'll be happy to speak to them. We'll give them a completely civil hearing, but we won't get anyone because they're terrified of us. They're terrified of having their own recklessness exposed.
That's right. I'd love to see a debate between a trans activist and a gender critical person, but the moderator has a great big red button. And anytime any one of these people, and it makes a huge buzzing sound, maybe it even delivers an electric shock to the person who's violating the issues. But if somebody
Don't say
uses
that.
No. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay, not
no,
the electric shock, but
we are not standing by electric shocks for anyone with wrong thing. That's their side.
I'm just kidding. No, but like if in the debate, if somebody tries to use like emotional manipulation instead of addressing an issue, big loud buzzer, stop.
Yeah.
And if you try to like attack personally your opponent, big red buzzer, stop. And you have to stick to the issues. If somebody raises a point, you have to either criticize the point or agree with the point. And you just have to stick to the rules of reason and debate. And this would just never ever happen. With what?
No, with fact checking.
Oh yeah,
fact checking. Yeah. So when somebody says, over sort of 98% of sexual assaults are committed by males, we can say fact check. Yes, this is true. Source, whatever. And then when people say that actually there is no problem, males pose no problem to females, or things about female sports, we can fact checks there. That would be perfect.
That's it.
I want to be the moderator with a big button, though. I want that button.
That's the other problem, is that the people who generally host these debates are so far. Now is this my connection or everyone else's? But
I think it's all of us.
There for a second. But like the other problem is the moderators. They don't have a clue. They don't know. They don't.
Yeah.
No, it is a problem, isn't it? I mean, you see it in radio shows when
is this
people make. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. But you see it on radio shows when people make statements and they're not challenged. I think that's one of the most irritating things, is when when people aren't challenged, it's not followed up. And you think it's such a missed opportunity, a perfect opportunity to actually say, is this what you truly believe? What do you think the consequences of this are? But it's not something.
Well, that woman from Matilda, who jumps on anyone with a blue tick who is standing up for women. I noticed her using the exact same wording that she used on me 3 years later, which is, why are you doing this to the most vulnerable in society, blah, 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 and no one over those 3 years, she's either turned off her replies or made sure that no one can answer. And the question is, what are you talking about? They're not the most vulnerable in society. They're generally privileged, middle class, white men.
True, but even if it was true, and I think this is a really important point, even if it was true that trans women were the most vulnerable sector of society, still doesn't mean that women and girls should have to undress with male-bodied people with penis.
Right. It's not women's education.
We should absolutely be looking to see what the problem is. Why are they the most vulnerable? Who is making them vulnerable? Who is attacking them? Who is murdering them? How can we do this? How can we make them safe whilst also keeping women and girls safe? Even if it is true, this still isn't the answer.
Yeah. But we must always Totally agree, Helen. But it's also important to just cut these arguments off at the source, because, as we all know, there is no murder epidemic of trans people.
No.
There is statistics in I believe Brazil, where it's mostly sex workers, right? Which is another
black
thing.
Sex workers who are gender non-conforming homosexuals, essentially. Yeah.
Yes, and also female.
It's arguably much more. It's about female, the murdering of women in general in the sex trade, and gay people who are lured into the sex trade because they're gender non-conforming and have to be travesti, which isn't even transsexual. It's transvestite, but travesti is Portuguese for transvestite, not transsexual. But
oh, really? Yeah, that's interesting. But as we know, those figures are extrapolated dishonestly from and made to look like basically made to look like trans people are just running around the streets being pursued by gangs of trans murderers.
Yes.
I actually think this is really, really important. I'm always trying to think of like ways to get through to outsiders, and so that we're not just in our echo chamber. How do you break through to people who aren't seeing this? And there was a Twitter discussion the other day, and we were coming to the realization that the vulnerability thing is really sort of the keystone that holds the whole arch together. So if we really need to emphasize that most trans people in North America are not vulnerable at all. We really need to take that image of vulnerability that is immediately conjured in people's minds when they hear the word trans away, so that some people who are trans are vulnerable, but it's not the default thing. Most people who are trans are middle-aged, straight, white males who own homes and, who have secure jobs. They still face kinds of persecution, but by and large, they don't. I feel like there should be a lot more resources put into to emphasizing that this is not a vulnerable population, because if we can crack the automatic subconscious association between being trans and being precious and vulnerable, I think a lot more outsiders would be able to see this with open eyes.
I agree. And also, as we spoke about last week, trans is not one thing, and there are lots of different sectors to it, some of which are far more vulnerable than others. And I do think that also needs to be made clear, that the white middle-aged guys that work in Silicon Valley, or people who work in Silicon Valley, are very, very different to the sort of 14-year-old girls who feel very, very very uncomfortable with their bodies in an increasingly sexualized, pornified society. They're so completely different, and I think this also needs to be made very, very clear.
Tish here says this, which is true, and someone pointed out today that if trans people were killed at the same rates that women are killed, there'd be no trans people left.
Wow.
But it's just extraordinary how they have totally flipped the vulnerability of people. Like Silicon Valley engineers who will probably try and who are watching over all of our speech. I just got banned from Facebook for 7 days for saying that weird kid from Wogan can't get pregnant. but it's true. He's just this very desperately sad, troubled kid who used to be on Wogan and was basically sniggered at for the whole of his childhood. He gets into his, he grows up and he decides he's trans, and he posts a photo of himself with a pregnancy kit, going, "Oh, let's see what happens," and it's like Silicon Valley has banned me.
It's sad, isn't it? That's so desperately sad.
And they banned me for 7 days for saying, "Why the fuck are you encouraging this level of dementia amongst people?" And it's the kind of dementia that when you share it and it doesn't get any pushback, it doesn't get any opposition, then you kind of spread that dementia to other people. And as we know, that's one way of looking at this whole thing, is that a lot of people are suffering from a kind of dementia where they just simply believe, I don't know what they believe. It's really hard to, I'm involved.
I think it's more delusion than dementia. I think it's like a mass delusion, like often religions can be,
Yes. Well, I
always
do think
imagining
that
the Scientologists.
I always say this is the first internet spread mass delusion. If the satanic panic had happened during the internet, oh my God, it would have wreaked so much more havoc than it did.
Yeah,
And it ruined lives, the satanic panic, you know. But
that's
it
right.
ruined
People went to
lives.
prison.
Yeah,
A lot of innocent people went to prison, and you know, you never know. There might still be people in prison.
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
But
But
I'm still not convinced that most people are, and even they are deluded. They know full well it's just emperor's new clothes for most people. I think, you know, they
yeah,
simply don't want to say it. They think, well, you know, poor thing. Let's just leave them to have that. You know, maybe it's making them happy, and
yeah,
you know, maybe it is, but I'm not sure it's the right response, and it certainly isn't helping women and girls,
yeah,
and it certainly isn't helping when
No.
women and girls sort of pointed out and then they are vilified,
yeah,
and, you know, shouted at and called bigots for pointing out the obvious truth.
Yeah. Well, that's
yeah.
really scary, though. If a lot of people are just being passive and saying, okay, I know that this person isn't really the sex they claim to be, and I know that this person isn't really capable of getting pregnant, but leave them alone. They're not hurting anyone. Maybe that person needs to be shown how much harm is being done, how big the stakes are for women and girls and young gays too.
But we try
The
all the
stakes
time.
are massive, you know.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They are.
We try all the time. I showed there's someone I'm involved in at the moment who's slightly on the other side, and I keep sending them examples of where there's problems and what's going on, and I never really get a response. I never get a clear response of, yes, that's obviously a problem and it needs to be sorted out. I get a response, well, I'd need to see more information and blah blah. Like, and this is someone who's basically, you know, he's obviously in a very woke industry, you know, and I can tell that the reason that he cannot accept any of these points, or that he cannot add to them and stuff, is that he knows his career will be over. His career will be over if he agrees, you know.
But wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it be better if he could just be honest with you? Just honestly say, I totally get where you're coming from, and I'm really sorry that I can't back you up publicly. But
yeah, no,
I
even
agree,
that
but
would
I'm not
be
going to
something.
say it.
Yeah, it's shocking. It really is, you know. And all these people who are being held hostage by like the Guardian and the New York Times, they're being held hostage by a generation that simply does not know how to deal with disagreement. You know, they've grown up with helicopter parents who haven't let them out of their sight, and they've disappeared online, and you know, they're diagnosing each other, and they're kind of coming up with this alternate reality this
is very true. And I also think one of the problems is because most people are thinking, well, let's be kind and nice and not say very much. The leadership has fallen to the shoulders of extremists. So, you know, the people who are talking, who are sort of pushing forward the agenda, are really quite extreme, because there don't seem to be very many moderate people sort of willing to speak out and say, okay, you know, yes, we've got this. However, we can see the conflict here. It's most people are just quiet about it. They're not, you know, they're not willing to say anything, and so they've allowed this to flourish.
Yeah, the word moderate plays a big role there, because I think things have become so severely polarized, and there's such certainty around right and wrong. Because generally there has been. In the United States, the right has just gotten more and more insane, to the point that it's very easy to say there's no reason to have, you know, across the aisle dialogue anymore, because the right is just nuts. And that means there's certainty that anything that is a left position, a progressive position, doesn't need to be analyzed, because we just know that they're evil. They're not just people we disagree with. They've gone off the rails, and by and large they have. But that leaves open an opportunity for somebody to plant an issue within the left's, you know, sphere of ideas that maybe isn't correct, and the left doesn't know how to do any inward evaluation of their own positions anymore, because they're just so angry at the right. So there's no room for anyone to say sometimes the right is right on this one particular issue. There's absolutely no room for that anymore. Things are so polarized. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot more discussion in the UK, where things aren't quite as extreme. Although I think the Tories are pretty awful a lot of the time, to be honest.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I've never voted Tory in my life. I never would.
Gender critical feminists are 90% of them are fucking left wingers. You know, they've been active in left wing politics their whole life, and the fact that people like Owen Jones can pretend that Linda Bellos and Helen Steele are fascists or something is just a real sign of his. I mean, you know, what a fraud. You know,
I actually think it's a sign that he's very, very well aware that these women are left wing, because otherwise, why would it feel like an insult to him to hurl the sort of the words you're right wing at them? If they were right wing, they wouldn't care. I mean,
that's very true. That's very true.
It's obvious.
Yeah,
that's why it's used as an insult.
Yes. That's very, very true. Someone did that to me. Someone on Twitter once did that to me, compared me to some right-wing troll. And it was like, well, the only reason he said that was because he knew it would hurt, you know? I mean, that's the fucking thing. They don't want to win arguments, or they don't want to discuss things. They just want to hurt. Like you were saying, Helen, the kind of endless derision and the use of not even those thought terminating cliches that we're so used to, like trans women or women, but the use of just things that are meant to make you think that your argument isn't even worth considering, you know, just like memes or jokes or whatever it happens to be. You know, I used to do it. I'm ashamed to say I used to do it. One reason I'm kind of glad my Twitter account is gone, even though as I'm fond of saying, I have the archive, so I don't know what to do with it, but I have it. But one of the reasons I'm glad it's gone is because I was one of those people. I used to, during Gamergate, I used to respond to everyone with the same level of derision and not really listen to them, and you know, these one-word curt non-answers. I was big on all that, you know, and I didn't realize that I was kind of joining in with a kind of a I don't know what you'd call it, but a kind of
it's endless. This is, and it's circular. There's no resolution there. There's no breaking through. It's just a playground. It's a playground fight. It's interesting to hear you say that. I mean, I very much try not to do this. You know, I respond to arguments with an actual argument. But I mean, it's very difficult, and it's very wearing, because you think, how much shit am I supposed to actually take?
Yeah.
But the rewards are quite good, because if you don't, and then you can't tweet out examples of, you know, how people are trying to diminish your argument, people can actually see it, and then they can say, okay, well, yeah, why is this happening? Why is somebody not actually willing to address the question here? I think that can work quite well, but it is really quite tedious and time consuming, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was talking to someone today about what they don't realize as well is they don't realize how influenced they are by the internet. I used to talk about Murdoch. You know, I was the world's biggest Murdoch hater, you know, and now the Times is the only newspaper that's covering things like the Tavistock. The Guardian shamefully has ignored it. But when Murdoch, I remember one of the big things with Murdoch was, the way I used to put it to people was that the people in the UK were kind of under hypnosis, in the sense that they all just kind of thought it was okay that Murdoch's newspapers were putting cameras in people's sinks at home so they could get photographs of them snorting cocaine. And the UK was in a kind of a trance where it just thought, oh yeah, they're celebrities, therefore that's okay. It's okay to do that to celebrities because they're somehow less than human. Murdoch, you know, of course they're not, but Murdoch had kind of just hypnotized people into thinking that it was fine. And so everyone went along with it until the scandals, the phone tapping scandals and stuff. And then everyone just woke up out of it. And what people don't realize is that Twitter, Facebook, all these platforms, YouTube, all these platforms are publishers, just the same way Murdoch was. And we are now in this state where we've been hypnotized into thinking, you know, all the gender cliches, trans women are women, all this sort of stuff. People don't really like. Let me give you a very good example. I was talking to a young person the other day, and they said, "What do you think of Biden?" Right? And I said, "Biden." I said, "I don't really think about him a lot, to be honest. Anything's preferable to Trump." And this young person says, "But Biden is a fascist too. This is someone in the UK. And where have you got that Biden is a fascist? And it's because all their influences, all the things they're looking at online, they originate in Silicon Valley. It's a completely US centric view of the world. It's like Jane Clare Jones used to joke about when she'd get into arguments with Americans and they talk about colonialism. She would say, "Which colonialism?" And they'd go,
Yes.
"Well, colonialism." So because they only think it's the American Indians, what the American Indians suffered is the only colonialism, and it's true. You see, the whole world now is being put through an American filter, and it's anyway, it's a bad thing. That's the brilliant ending to my little speech there.
Yes.
But anyway, anything else been grabbing your attention this week?
Yeah, there was something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, you go. Please, you go.
Well, Nature. Did anybody see the Nature? The journal
yeah.
Nature. It's another horrible thing where apparently this actually happened a couple months ago, but it's really gotten everyone's attention this week. That the journal Nature, highly prestigious, any mention of the word sex is going to prompt, what do you call it? Like a disclaimer that the journal Nature recognizes that sex is not binary and is not fixed.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
So
this
shocking.
Yes, it was shocking. I felt the influence is extraordinary, isn't it?
Again, I wonder if it's the younger staff who are holding a gun to their heads,
Yeah, because again, it's like the standards have been lowered. In Nature, if somebody actually discovered that human sex is not fixed, you can change a male to a female, that is the biggest Nobel Prize winning event in all scientific history. Yeah. Like, this is literally, if that's true, and they literally are just saying it like it's nothing. Oh, by the way,
Exactly. Yeah.
They don't really believe it. This is Nature. They know what is real science and what is bullshit. And they're going along with this just because, like you said, they've got a gun to their head from young people. And it's an insult to genuine transsexuals because they're just pandering.
It's politicizing. It's politicizing the journal Nature. The politicizing of this is extraordinary. The reach is extraordinary. It's everywhere in a way that other things simply are not.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that. But the thing I think that it speaks to is the continuing power that white men have.
Yes.
Because as we know, as Jane Clare Jones points out, the people who are driving the worst aspects to this are AGP men. It's their kind of aggression, the narcissism. That's why trans rights activism is such a shit show, because AGP men are in charge. If trans men were in charge, it might be a whole different story. You might actually be able to get a calm discussion, but you never hear from trans men. You just hear from AGP males, and
they're also the only ones benefiting from this. Even other trans men aren't benefiting from this, especially in the long run, and especially dysphoric girls who shouldn't become trans men in the first place. Young gays who probably shouldn't become trans women in the first place aren't benefiting from this. Genuine sympathetic transsexuals, AGP or otherwise, HSTS or JAGP, who are allies to women and are acknowledging biology, they're not benefiting from this at all. Already AGP as a class is just being so hyper vilified, and I don't think that's fair, to be honest. I think there are some decent people who have AGP and can't help it. So nobody's benefiting from this except for these aggressive jerks, these straight white males. Yeah.
Well, the way I often put it to people is that what we've done is we've given the bully class a nuclear weapon. That we've presented the bully class who these are all people who they really miss school because at school they were able to rule the world with their nastiness and their aggression and all those sorts of things. And then as soon as school stopped, they those kind of elements of attaining power were stripped from them. Because, you know, when you live in a society, when you're not in school, which is with its kind of Lord of the Flies rules, you know, you have to use different parts of your personality, your charm, your compassion, your empathy, your intelligence. All these things become more valued. And the bullies suddenly find that their glory days are over. This has been the bully class's best. This has been the best news for the bully class since
That's interesting.
In years. Yeah, I think so. If you look at things like, you know, when there's a film, I can't remember what it's called, Louis Malle, I think, but it's about a village and there's a guy in it and he's just a big, dumb, ugly guy who everyone hates, you know, and the Nazis come in and suddenly this guy is like ruling the roost, you know, because this kind of new kind of language of this new discourse of brutality suits him down to the ground. You know, and in the same way, you're getting, as Debbie Hayton often calls them, the worst bullies, the bullies who even the other bullies hated, the bullies who bullied women. You're giving them a leg up. You're giving them a stick to hit women with, to hit young people with. It's the most appalling state of affairs.
There certainly is a large element of bullying women involved in this whole thing, and you know because. That again, as we've already talked about, because the arguments aren't particularly clear cut for them. Women have to be browbeaten and bullied into acquiescing.
Yes.
Not with sort of rational arguments.
No.
Yeah.
Or
no.
you know, or not even if it's not just bullying. It's trying to sort of shame them into being nice. You know, oh please just be nice. Why can't you be nice? And sort of playing on that sort of role that the patriarchy has always expected of women. And then if they push back, it's more bullying.
Yeah, and it's also I think these are people who before this movement might not have been able to express their bullying desires that they had under the surface. I think of the movie Heathers. Remember Heathers, that 1989 black high school comedy? As a gay man, you know, it's the Bible.
Oh, I love Heathers.
But you remember they were killing all the jocks and the beauty queens, the sort of stereotypical bullies. But then the nerds slowly start bullying each other. You know, there's a gap, there's an opening in the social hierarchy, and suddenly these people who are powerless are suddenly starting to behave kind of pathologically and cruelly to each other. And it feels a bit like that, like these nerdy guys with their anime porn, you know, who normally would have probably been total just dweebs, are now like free to openly express their misogyny.
Hatred of women is very clear in a lot of this, a huge amount. Either just people who clearly don't care about women or who actively hate women. That's
Sorry,
where's Graham gone?
Sorry, I disappeared.
Oh, there he is.
He had to go order Heathers online to watch it again.
I think he's frozen up.
Uh-oh.
But I think we've had we've had about an hour now anyway. So he's frozen at probably a reasonable time. So so I think we should probably leave it there.
Yeah, well maybe let's give it a second to do a little wrap up and maybe Graham can pop in and say farewell. Yeah. I don't even know how to end it without Graham, actually. I think we're hostages.
We're going to be here forever.
How do we press stop? Oh, you're back. Are you back, Graham?
Hello. Am I?
Hello.
Here.
We were just saying
we've
lost.
Maybe I say goodbye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe I should say goodbye. I keep dropping out. So maybe we should leave it there, at least for me. You guys.
Well, you're the one with the stop broadcasting button.
You're the one with the big button. Yeah.
Oh no.
We're trapped on the air.
No.
So
okay. Well, then maybe well, maybe we should leave it at that for this week. I thought that was a good one.
Great.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Sorry I ducked out for the end of it, but
well, that's okay.
Yes, thank you. And
thank you to our favorite straight bottom.
And and thank you. And I'll see you guys next week around the same time. Yeah, Sunday or Monday.
Yeah.
See you guys soon. Okay. Bye.
Bye.